And Haynes, 30th fittest man in the world. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you. A little bit jet lagged, a wee bitty tired, but pretty damn good.
What was your time difference?
7 hours. Doesn't seem like much. Didn't get jet lagged on the way there.
Yeah.
It was pretty fine. It's not, honestly, it's not that bad.
What time do you land when you got there? In the morning or in the evening?
Morning, yeah. So that works out quite nicely.
All day.
Yeah. To be honest, my jet lag sleep right now is not that dissimilar to a normal sleep. Like I normally wake up for 30 minutes to an hour most nights, and it's pretty much the same. So I'm actually pretty damn good considering.
Yeah.
Anyway, just real quick, how do you feel about that title, 30th fittest man in the world? Have you introduced yourself as that to anyone since the games?
I have not. No. I think we'll probably talk about this in a sec, but going into the weekend, there was no expectations. There's not much pressure on me at all, apart from the pressure I might put on myself. But when you have a placement which is higher than your finishing place throughout the weekend, it then becomes almost a disappointment when you are not a higher ranked at the end of the weekend.
Wait, say it again. You have a finishing place that's
lower than a position that you were in during the weekend. So for example, I was sitting in 24th place,
right, yeah,
and had the workout maybe been like some of the,
had the order been different on the
Correct,
workouts,
yeah.
you could have actually finished a lot higher up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's just the style of the competition. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see that, especially in a year where it wasn't a national champions year, because I think a lot of people kind of put a little asterisk next to that year just because there's like 150 men and women. It was bonkers, and it was a bit of a shit show. Some would say, but I mean, I still thoroughly enjoyed that.
You still had to perform at the games,
yeah.
and you came 27th that year.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess when it's a field of 40, there's a lot less points on the table. It's much harder. The field of athletes,
the cuts were different,
very solid
as well.
They are probably actually the best 40 in the world. Whereas like when there's a field being cut down from 150 to 75 to 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 10, there was actually like a lot of big name athletes who got cut in that first cut after that rope climb workout. A lot of big name athletes got cut after the kettlebell push press and the handstand walk one.
Yeah.
So people would argue that those people would have taken points away from the big dogs in the lifting event or whatever, the clean event that was there that year. But no, it's cool. I'm happy with. I'm very content and satisfied, I guess, with this year.
Hold there, because I think I know where you're going to go next, but I want to just save that for a little bit later.
Okay.
So for listeners who are listening, which is why you're a listener or watching, some context to the conversation. And you've just competed at the 2023 CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
2 weeks before the 2023 CrossFit Games, you were not supposed to be competing.
Correct.
So quickly fill us in on the story.
All right. So you and I were both supposed to be going to one of our good friends' weddings, Ali Reese's in Scotland, on the same weekend as the games. I found out because the schedule hadn't been released for age group or for the individuals, so I didn't know if I would be able to go over there to coach Leigh. About 4 weeks before the games, they released the tentative schedule, at least told us that the masters would be competing on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which means that I could go and coach Leigh at the games and then leave late on Thursday night at just around midnight, fly through Reykjavik and then to Glasgow, then drive to the wedding location for Friday, have like the close friends dinner and drinks thing, and then wedding on Saturday, post-wedding stuff on Sunday, spend a bit of time in Scotland and London and stuff, and then fly back to Hong Kong. So that was basically my summer planned. So that was all good. I booked all my flights, and I was set on doing that. Leigh was happy. I was happy. Everything is sorted out. And then on July 19th, which was my birthday, I'd woken up and I got an email at 2 a.m. that morning when obviously I was sleeping. So that would have been like, midday in America. I got an email from Angel, who's the liaison who does all the individuals at the games, men and women. And I've been in contact with her because I was asking about the schedule for the age group athletes for Leigh. And I got an email which was very informal, and it basically said, "Hi Ant, such a bummer. Someone from Asia can't get a visa. We know you're going to be at the games during the week of the games. Do you fancy competing?" And that was legit. And then the bottom of the email said, "We've sent you another email with the registration link. Please click if you would like to register." And I was like lying in bed, like one eye open, kind of like wincing at my phone. I was like, this can't be real. So I like go out of that email, click this other email, and click register, which is like the same email you see for the open for quarters and semis. Click register, and it was basically like a dud link. There was nothing there. I was like, these fuckers.
Was it that? Sorry, no rep.
No, yeah, actually it was. Yeah. It said, sorry, no rep. This link is closed.
Yeah.
This competition is closed. And I was like, these fuckers are playing me. Someone's playing with me here, or like messing with me. So I kind of just left it for a little bit. I got out of bed, and I was like, right, well, I better reply to this anyway. So I ended up sending a reply to Angel and saying, yeah, I'm in. Like, I didn't really think about it too much, but I was like, yeah, I'm going. I'm in. And then I messaged you and said, hey, by the way, I just got this invite. I remember I wrote urgent on it because you're awful at answering your phone.
Yeah, I shot myself.
Yeah, so
I was like, what's happened to the gym? I honestly thought either the gym's burnt down or someo's had a serious accident there in hospital. So I was like panicked and opened my phone quick. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so got the email and I was like, hey, this is what's just come through. I'm going to the games, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, I asked you a couple of questions, but I was basically set on going to the games. So then that day, obviously, it was pretty manic. I had to try and cancel all my flights that I just booked a week before. The only flight I wouldn't cancel is, of course, the very first one, which I was supposed to be going to Chicago with Leon, which is Hong Kong, Taiwan, Chicago. Then I needed to book my flight back from Chicago back to Hong Kong. Extend my hotel stay because I was supposed to be leaving on Thursday. So that was a bit of a stress. I'd change all my car hires and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that was basically it. So 2 weeks out, I was like, shit, I think I had 6 days in Hong Kong to prep for it. I would lose a day of travel because it was like 26 hours in total of traveling to Madison from Hong Kong. And then it was trying to prep for really, I guess, 3 days in Madison before I then had to settle down, coach Leigh for the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning before I competed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and possibly Sunday. So
we'll talk about Leigh in a moment in terms of how you juggled that. But let's actually talk about that week.
Yeah.
So you say yes to games, 6 days until you're flying out. I think I had 1 day before I was flying out.
Yeah.
After finding out the news. So we said, right, what do we want to do with this time?
Yeah.
So we said, right, we kind of identify the things that we can do in 6 days, or already in 2 weeks, the things that we can't do.
And none of the workouts have been released.
None of the workouts have been released.
Yeah.
We basically admitted that, listen, we're not going to get any stronger. You're not going to get any fitter in 2 weeks. What we can do is work on things like technique and confidence, expose you to movements that might be coming up, and really just kind of give you one hit out of the likely volume that you might have to do.
Yeah.
So that if you do have to do that volume, at least you're not going to be fully prepared in 2 weeks, but at least you've had some exposure to it, so you'll be able to potentially handle it a bit better.
Yeah.
And then we kind of just wrote out a 3 sessions a day.
For 2 days.
2 days, mini simulation.
Yeah.
We're also kind of like waiting for events to come out. So basically kind of gave us the option that if an event comes out, we swap this workout for this one and actually give yourself a test run. But then obviously knowing that a travel to the US is going to really take it out of you, so you kind of lose almost like 3 days.
Yeah.
I think when you flew, we then mapped out your next week before the games, and you basically had like 2 days of just easy movement, try and get acclimatized to the new time zone.
Yeah.
And then you really had, I think you had 2 sessions.
Yeah.
Was it about 2 sessions to do some intensity?
I think I got after the email, that was maybe a Thursday, because I remember I had like a fairly relaxed morning. Oh no, it was a Wednesday because I came in. Yes, it was Wednesday. Had the Thursday, I didn't train. I just had a day off. And then Friday morning, I did Friday and Saturday, and I flew on Sunday. Yeah, so I had no time at all. I flew on Saturday night, and I trained Friday, Saturday, because I did the 5K run, got released on the Friday. I went and did the 5K run out on the trails in Hong Kong with a group of guys, and then did 2 other sessions, and then that was it. Yeah, it's pretty. Oh, and then we did a Helen variation. So I did double kettlebell snatch and bar muscle ups, which I guess would have been a good bit of prep anyway for that. But I think that was honestly the only bit of intensity that I tried to create. So once I landed in the States, like you said, we'd kind of tried to write some sort of prep. Oh my God, I was so flat in the States. Like Leigh was actually okay. Like she was getting on with the training. She was fine. And I remember being in this gym, like it was a really good CrossFit gym. It was called Twisted Fitness. It was like MMA, and they got everything in there. And I remember just sitting there being like, I was like, what do I got to do? I was like, all right, I'm going to try and, oh no, then the clean and jerk and snatch got announced as like the day I arrived there.
Yeah.
So the first thing was like, okay, just get my hands on a barbell and do some clean and jerk and snatching. You'd actually asked me to do it a day later, but I just did it a day before anyway. I knew again roughly what sort of weights I'd be able to hit on the day. So I just started lifting, and I think I was like 25 kg under the weight. So I wanted to hit on both the lifts, on both the snatch and the clean jerk. Everything felt heavy. Ended up just doing like some pirouettes and some handstand work, and then sat in a bike erg. And that was my session. Then put like the leg sleeves on and just trying to like recover and try to recuperate. Next day I came in, I was like, right, I'm going to create some intensity today. I turned up at the gym and there must have been 75 CrossFit Games athletes at the gym. I was like, holy shit, it's so busy. So the session I had planned out, I basically binned it off, did some running, did some bike erging as an AM session, went and sat with some leg sleeves on for like 3 hours until the gym died down. Ended up doing a PM session. I met up with Vicky Campos. She just arrived that day. And that was actually really good. And I managed to get a bit of intensity out of that, but nothing that I would consider like game style intensity, but it was something more than I try to program me those sandbag cleans to try and mimic the pig. And I literally did one. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. I can't. Like the bag was like a massive bag, you know, the ones that kind of like flop over your shoulder. And it was like impossible to clean. But I still did it anyway, got through it all. I remember doing 10 toes to bar and 10 chest to bar and being completely fucked. Like I was so tired and I couldn't even like do another rep. And like that didn't make me feel very good. But I also understood, you know, where my body was at. I wasn't like getting depressed about it. I was like, okay, well, hopefully in 24 hours, I'll be able to create a bit more intensity. So the next day rolled around and I trained again, which was basically going to be my last training session before I had to go into coaching Leigh. So yeah, like that was basically it. I managed to create a little bit of intensity again, did a session with Vic, and that was a good session, but it was short and sweet. Just did a single one that day. I remember I did some peg boards, did some bar muscle ups, did some chest to bars, did some kettlebell work, like kettlebell squat cleans, kettlebell thrusters. And yeah, that was basically it. And then Leigh and I both had a rest day where we did a swim that day. The swimming never came up at the games, but we did a swim, and we'd been trying to get to a swimming pool like for 4 days in a row, but just so happened that week in Madison was like the week that all kids are off school, and like all the public pools were hosting kids swimming championships. So we couldn't get in anywhere. It was an absolute nightmare. And the lake was disgusting. Like we weren't going to go in that lake. So I managed to do a swim that day. And then basically the next day, Leigh started. When Leigh had registered, I went and registered as a coach. And I was walking around the athlete area, and I basically said to myself, like, okay, no more training now. Like we're done. And as soon as I walked into the athlete area, I think all 38, because Jason Smith wasn't there, obviously, and I was the other athlete, 38 other male athletes and 40 female athletes were all training in the athlete area. And I walked in, I was like, oh man, I feel so underprepared right now. Like everyone was crushing training, like doing hard stuff, like lifting heavy, pushing hard in conditioning sets. Like they were breathing heavy, lying on their backs and stuff. And I'm walking around with like an energy drink and some sweets. And I'm like, oh God.
A coach's badge on.
Yeah, and a coach's pass on, yeah. Carrying Leigh's bag and like, you know, getting her barbell out for her. And I felt like I had big imposter syndrome at the time. And that continued for the next 2 days whilst I was coaching Leigh and prepping her and getting her ready for the games. I remember one day she just finished an event, and I'd set her up like, I was like, okay, you're going to ice bath this time. This is your protocol. You're going to come back in. You're going to have your shake and you're going to stretch and do this. So I set her up for like 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do some lifting. I picked up a barbell. I did a couple of power snatches, did a couple of power cleans and push presses. And I was like, that's enough. And I must have maybe done a total of 16 lifts. And I got up to like 100 kg on the clean and push press and like 70 kg on the snatch. And I was like, oh my God, this is not bode well for the next 5 days for me. But that was basically my training. So it definitely didn't fill me with confidence going into, you know, the most competitive weekend of the year for this sport. But I also knew that once the events were kind of rolling out, I was like, right, yeah, I'll be able to, I know I can push on some of these workouts. Some of these workouts are going to be hard for me, but a lot of them are good for me as well. And I can probably showcase what I currently have, you know, versus it being a shitload of heavy work or, you know, stuff I'd really not prepared for at all. I feel like the elite program that I've been following from the process it's had all the touches of things that I might need, you know, like things like pirouettes, things like freestanding handstand push-ups, things like handstand holding, pegboards, we've had those in there, pullovers, we've had those in there, high rep ring and bar muscle ups, stuff that you would kind of see during the season anyway. But because, the elite program has the AM and PM split, it still allows athletes to have touches on that, where we actually had gone, they were just going through a rebuilding phase. So I kind of missed that rebuilding phase. And so I didn't feel games ready, but I felt ready enough, I think.
I mean, one thing that I will say that I have noticed this season compared to previous years, and we talked about this in your reflections from the semi-finals, was having the maturity to know that close to competition, what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done.
Yeah.
And I think years past, and this is a very typical feeling, right, that a lot of athletes have just before competition. They get this feeling that, shit, competition's close. I need to like jam in as much as I possibly can to make sure that I'm ready.
Yeah.
And the feeling of not doing anything, it will, triggers feelings of losing fitness, losing strength, not being prepared, or like you said, seeing other people do things, thinking that you should be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I saw you at semi-finals, and I think normally in the past, it would be me trying to pull you back, 1 week out to say, like, you don't need to do that much. Like, the fitness is all there. We just need to recover and make sure you're ready for game day. And we probably had a bit of resistance on that topic. And this year in semi-finals, it was actually you to come out and say straight away, listen, like, there's nothing else I need to do now. The work's been done. I just need to recover, recuperate. So in knowing that that's what you went through at the games and hearing it now, I think that's testament to your maturity as an athlete in knowing that, okay, like actually this is the best thing for me. And then, when we look at the performances on game day and then you look back, well, actually maybe that was the right move. Like maybe actually taking that rest. One thing I will say though, is I think the inability, and probably because of, a really hard last week of prep, travel, coaching Leigh, and not then being able to do the intensity that close to the games, I think, which is probably what we'll talk about when we actually talk about the events and actually competing, why you pulled up so sore and so battered, because you're probably someone that tolerates volume better than most athletes. And I rarely hear you say that like you're really sore or you're feeling like kind of a bit broken from a workout. But I know throughout the games weekend, that was something you felt, I think, straight after day one.
Actually, I think a lot of people actually... Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it in a sec, but yeah, I think a lot of people were complaining of just feeling pretty busted up. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that covers like the conversation of Leigh, and I think that was important to talk about because I think, like you said, there's a lot of people were asking how you were balancing that. I mean, can I just ask, like, was there anything that you were considering or thinking about in trying to juggle those things? Because I know that how you talked about coaching Leigh at the games the year before, where you'd said that was one of the most stressful things you've ever done. What did you change, knowing that you're going to be competing straight after?
So Leigh and I have obviously spent a lot of time together in terms of coach athlete and just as friends as well. I think we know each other pretty well.
By the way, shout out to Leigh, who finished 4th in her age group.
With
a really gutsy performance with a body that wasn't functioning so well. So amazing shout out to Leigh as well.
For sure. Yeah, I think we know each other very well, and she knows what I provided for her last year. I know what I provided for her last year. And I think as soon as I got that email through on July 19th, I met with her on July 20th. And I said, like, look, it's amazing news. It's awesome. And I'm going to say yes, but this is going to affect what I can provide for you on your week of the games. I said, I don't know what my schedule's going to be like. I can give you a tentative schedule, but there are going to be things that I'm probably going to miss. And I know she just accepted that, and she was like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. But I think when push came to shove and like event 1 and event 2 for her, which were tied together as one event, started rolling around, I think she started panicking a bit. So what we had done before that was basically the years previous, I was like, this is what you're doing, write it down. Don't even write it down, I'm just going to talk about it, and I will remind you on game day. I can give it all to you. Like I'll take you through your warm-up. I'll basically load your barbell. You just follow what I say, and we're going to go. You just execute what I told you to do. And she crushed it. That's why, she came second and she nailed it last year. I couldn't do that for her. Or I didn't know if I would be able to do that for her. So we basically tried to take the worst case scenario. So night before each of the days, on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Thursday, we went through the events that were laid out on the table for us. So event 1, event 2, and event 3, for example, on Tuesday. Okay, event 1. It's lifting, it's a snatch and a clean and jerk. This is your opener. This is exactly what the plates look like on the bar, because I wasn't sure if I was going to be there or not. So this is what the plates look like on the bar. If you want to go up to X weight, these are the weights that goes on the bar. These are the colors that go on the bar. Same for the clean and jerk. When you do the farmer's carry around the obstacles, like this is what you're going to do. Like, so literally trying to spell it out for her in a way together, not just me, just like barking orders, but I would always pose a question to her. She would sometimes be able to come back to me with an answer, sometimes not. And then we would write it down. We would come up with a solution. But, you know, I think one thing I've definitely struggled with Leigh, and I know she would, you know, graciously accept this criticism, is that I've been trying to provide her with autonomy. You know, if a day comes that I stop coaching and she doesn't have a coach by her side, she needs to be able to do this by herself. And I've been striving to try and create that environment where she can learn and take things on herself. And I know she really struggles with it. You know, she said to herself, like, I'm really struggling with it. I don't know how to do that. Things like intentions when it comes to workouts, processes when it comes to movements, mindsets behind things, like she really struggles to take on herself, and she needs the support, which is totally fine. Like, you know, some athletes do. Some athletes are also completely opposite. They absolutely need no support and they can just go do it all themselves. Some people sit in the middle. So that's something that we've definitely been striving for, to try and create autonomy for her. And she struggled with that. So we could see that was kind of showing a little bit as we got towards her competitive day. So writing it down, all the strategies on a piece of paper, was like the best way that we could kind of prepare her for it. Unfortunately, during event 1 for her, I had to go and get sized up for the trail trek bikes for event 1. And that actually took 4 hours. I was out, like me and all the individual athletes were out in the, it's called Quinn Park behind North Park. We're there for 4 hours, trying on helmets, getting fitted, getting taught through the bikes. We did test laps, all that sort of stuff. And it just took forever. So then I remember as soon as I finished, I basically went and found Adrian Bosman. And I said, Boz, I have an athlete about to go in the age group. Like, can you help me? He's like, all right, like, get a bike and let's just ride to North Park, and like I'll get you through the exit in the entrance. So Boz basically led me into North Park through like the official entrance area, and I basically ran straight to the back. Vrushali, who's Vicky Campos' girlfriend, who was coaching her at the time at the games, or just being a coach, I guess, for her, and someone there had kindly stepped in to fill my place. I didn't know about that, but she was like looking at me, like her eyes were wide open. She's like, she needs help. So basically went in. I could see Leigh was a bit flustered for event 1 and event 2. So just try to calm her down a bit. She said, like you said, you know, she got a bit of a broken body. She took an injury in around her knee and around her calf, but also on her quad. And her quad was not basically doing what she wanted it to do. So she couldn't hit a squat for her clean and her snatch, unfortunately. So just trying to calm her down and like make sure she was, you know, still able to go out and execute the way we wanted to. She still did really well on like, you know, a bit of a broken body. But I think event 1 and event 2 just flustered her a little bit. She knew it wasn't going to be a great event for her. And it kind of broke her a little bit. And I wasn't there to be by her side for it, which I know I definitely could have helped somewhat, whether it was just words of encouragement or reminder of strategy or whatever it might be. So, you know, we took that on the chin as a pair, as we kind of, it's a tough workout. But she came back and she absolutely smashed the next event, which was Helen for her. But again, you know, just for her talking about the autonomy side of things, I said to her, I was like, you're going to do this workout unbroken. And she looked at me, she's like, I can't do it unbroken. I've never done more than 6 pull-ups unbroken. How can I do 12 unbroken? I said, you're going to be fine. I know it sounds so like budget as me as a coach, just being like, go do it. But again, if the athlete can't comprehend their own ability, how can they understand your strategy that you're trying to give them? Yeah. But you know, thanks to Leigh, like she put her full trust in me, and she went and I think she crushed everyone else by like 30 plus seconds in her heat. She absolutely smashed out the park, which is a huge confidence boost that we needed. But yeah, you know, it was very tough trying to juggle the two, trying to prepare myself for the games. Like I had to be selfish or selfless, whichever way you want to look at it. But I could definitely feel myself, like my anxiety was growing, not for my athletic pursuit, but for my coaching side of things. I could feel what I was feeling last year starting to creep in, and I was doing my best to try and pull back and not have that, because I knew it would crush me for what I needed to do in the next few days. So like Mike, Kenzie and Taylor, who are Leigh's family, like they were great, you know, always so supportive of Leigh, and they played a huge role in helping her crush the weekend. And I think, you know, just probably finishing up on Leigh now is that when the workouts came out, I looked at all the workouts and I didn't say anything. I saw them all. And I could see a bit of fear in her eyes. We were sitting in the hotel room. She said, "Have you seen the workouts?" I'm like, "Yes," I've nodded. Didn't say anything. And I could see her just like looking at them for like 30, 40 minutes. And I said, "What do you think?" And she just, "Oh, they're hard. These are going to be really hard for me." And, you know, to be fair, for someone who's 3'5", it was definitely going to be a very challenging weekend for her. There's a lot of machines in there, a lot of longer events. Things that basically were not going to be good for her. 100 wall balls, for example, and 100 calories of rowing in one workout. You know, but fair play. Again, like she pulled her finger out and she really crushed it. Things like the 5K run, which I know normally she would have just turned around and been like, "I'm taking dead last here." She came in second, like amazing results. And she put the work in for that. So, you know, super happy that she ended up actually believing in herself. And I know for Leigh, she won't be happy deep down taking fourth, but I think it's an amazing showing for her, for the set of workouts that were there and the injury that she was carrying. And I just hope that she, you know, that rekindles and relights and of anything, throws gasoline on the fire for next year for her. Because again, like when I look at her compared to the ladies out there, they're all amazing ladies, all 10 of them. But, you know, she is a genetic freak. She's still got like an 8-pack and she's shredded, and the shit that she can do is just incredible as I won't say her age, but a 55 to 59 category female is just amazing. So, Leigh, if you're listening, I hope you are ready for next year.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good job. I think, I mean, anyone who's ever coached an athlete and anyone who's ever competed as an athlete will know that those two things in isolation are very stressful things. Yeah. And I've experienced that myself, coaching and competing in the same weekend. And, at the biggest event in our sport, I can only imagine how that was. So Anyway, well done to you as a coach, for guiding Leigh in those last couple of months leading up to the games and being there for her on the weekend. I think as well, the fact that financially as a coach, there's nothing really in it for you. To travel halfway across the world to do these things. I mean, I know that as well because, I choose to do that. So I think it's, I think just amazing job with that.
And I think just on that, I think, shout out to not just the process community and the guys at Coastal Fitness here, but everyone who has supported myself and Leigh on our journey. It means the world to us. And, we want to do this every single year. And I guess, I don't know, until the day I can't put my arms over my head anymore or bend my knees anymore. But thank you so much for all the support. The support, whether it's the financial support or messages of love and support, like every single message was heard and read. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Let's go back to you this weekend on the CrossFit Games weekend.
Yeah.
CrossFit Games put up a video of you sitting in an ice bath.
Fucking hell.
Basically, asking you about what your situation was.
Yeah.
And in the way that you responded, which I felt was very honest, open, heartfelt, vulnerable.
Yeah.
You talked about feeling of like loneliness and sadness were two words that you kind of used. So can you talk us through what you were feeling and what that video represented?
I think to put into context, firstly, it was about a 6-minute video, and they took the last minute of our conversation. I was talking about
classic.
Yeah, the actual first 5 minutes was talking about how I'd prepped for the games or how I hadn't prepped for the games. Basically, what we spoke about at the beginning just now. And then they took, they said like, "Well, how are you feeling?" And then I kind of opened up about how I was feeling. I guess even just looking at the situation that I was in there and then on the camera, I'm sitting in an ice bath by myself. Everyone in the background's like, there's an athlete in an ice bath with like 2 or 3 people around them doing stuff, and I'm just getting interviewed by these 2 ladies. So it was definitely a different experience to 2019. 2019, firstly, was hectic. There's a lot of people there all the time. You were there. I had Tammy there as well. Mum and Dad were there. I had friends, Ali and Tetros came down and supported, and it was really cool. But you kind of take that stuff for granted sometimes, I feel. I think the hardest part was not like there were some hard times when I was just in the room by myself because Leigh left on the Friday, so I was basically by myself from the Friday and Saturday. But yeah, it's when you like finish a workout and it's not that anything needs to be said. Not that anything needs to be said, needs to be done, but it's just knowing someone is there just in in case something is needed, or someone just asks you like how you are or how'd that workout go, or gives you a fist bump or something like that. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, all the other guys there who are competing against me are super nice guys, and, you know, I had conversations with pretty much all of them, and they all were very supportive of my situation, and just like they were stoked that I was there. But they're competing against me, so at that time they're not going to come over and be like, oh, how you doing, and that sort of thing. So yeah, like at those times, it was hard to not share, to be able to share my experience, my ups, my highs, and my lows. So that was very challenging. I know on the night that Leigh left, I was basically sat in my room, and I remember I was actually doing some work at the time. I closed my laptop and I just started crying in front of my desk, and I don't really know what I was crying about. I feel actually a bit sad just thinking about it now. But yeah, I just started like welling up, and just there was no one to share my time with and this whole experience with, which is an amazing experience. You know, I definitely felt like the 2019 games it kind of fell into my lap. I was quite clearly the number one in China at the time. This year, I guess it also fell into my lap, but I felt like I'd put the work in. It was a much harder journey to try and get there, and I was just lucky to get the backfill spot. But yeah, it was sad not to be able to share any of that with anyone. I'm like eternally grateful to guys like Max El-Haj from Training Think Tank. He was a legend and stepped in. I know you and I both have quite a good relationship with Max, but he basically filled your boots, but not in a real coaching manner, more as a friend. And he was amazing. He was great, just someone to shoot the shit with. We were taking the piss out of each other all weekend. We actually had a really good time. And he probably won't listen to this, but thank you so much to Max. Travis Mayo was also there, who's a good friend of mine. He was always supportive. We came to the hotel just to hang out every night. Even Noah Olsen reached out loads, and these guys I've spent some time with as well in the past. So like I said, everyone was very supportive, but it was definitely a feeling of loneliness and sadness at some points through, the kind of euphoria of the competition as well. During the day of the competition, like, you don't really have time to feel sad. You don't really have time to feel happy. It's like you finish something, you're in the ice bath, you're like, shit, I got like 30 minutes before I need to put my shoes back on and start warming up for the next one. So it kind of all goes real quick. And when the day is done at like 5 p.m., you're like, okay, I'm just going to get in my car and just drive home by myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was all of it. That's where kind of you realize your situation you're in.
Are there any like revelations or any like epiphanies that you've taken away from that?
Yes and no. I think, at the end of the day, I do this for myself anyway. I don't do this for anyone else. This is something that I love to do and something that I want to do. I'm just lucky that I have a supportive team around me, and I can't expect that team to be there. They do so much for me through, the 360 other days of the year. I can't expect them to be there for the 5 that this weekend just fell on, because there's shit that people need to do. People have their own lives to live, and I can't provide them with financial reward or anything that's going to allow them to then miss whatever it might be. So at the end of the day, like, I need to be okay with it. So yeah, it's a hard question, I guess, but no real revelations apart from the fact that I choose to do this, and I choose the hard route. It's not an easy sport to do. It's probably one of the hardest sports there are out there, and it's an individual sport. It's just most of the time people have their team around them, and it just so happened that this year I didn't have my team around me.
I mean, I guess is there anything that? Well, number one, hopefully next year we lock in our ticket a lot earlier, and we can make the plans and not have this process to go through. But is there anything that you can do as an athlete to help ensure that situation doesn't happen again? I know so much of it was circumstantial this year, but
I don't know. I mean, I was speaking to you pretty regularly, but I mean, you were busy getting your knee dirty and proposing to your girlfriend at the time, now fiance. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I didn't really want to disturb you, although I knew I wasn't disturbing you, but I didn't want to take up your time. You were trying to enjoy your holiday. Some of my other friends were on their holidays and whatnot, so I just kind of left it all as it was. And like I said, Max was great. I'm just happy that I have made good connections within the CrossFit community to allow me to still be successful and have some good people around me, which would support me anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this concept of belonging.
Yeah.
You posted about this a number of times. I posted about this on behalf of you.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with things that you have said, but just things that I have felt in terms of you belonging in that space, in that arena with those levels of athletes. Yeah. What do you mean when you say like, this is where I belong?
Yeah, I think on July 19th, when I got that email, the first thing I did was then wipe my whiteboard on my fridge clean, which had like a shopping list on it. And I just wrote in capital letters, I belong. It's actually still there on my fridge. And I just put Games 2023 underneath. I think the first thing I felt once I accepted the email was, like I mentioned before, it's like in a sense of imposter syndrome. Like getting a backfill, the fact that it's called a backfill space, it just makes it feel like you never earned it to an extent. So I had like a feeling of imposter syndrome for sure. I also felt, because of my kind of happy-go-lucky nature that I was bringing into it, like zero expectations sort of thing, people were looking at me like, oh, this guy's a bit of a fucking joker. He's just here to kind of take the piss. But I knew deep down, like, I'm not gonna just fucking roll over and die. I'm gonna fight for every second, fight for every point, or whatever it might be. But I guess I made myself be that way so that I could take the pressure off myself and try and enjoy it a bit more. Because for sure, 2019, it was over in the blink of an eye. And everyone always says like, you got to enjoy this stuff, and you can't just like get overawed by it all and just take it all in, and it just disappears. Like 3 days of crazy competition just disappears, and you forget what happens, the conversations you have with people, the photos you take with the fans, the workout, what happened with the judge, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think writing I belong on my phone and on my fridge just reminded me that what have I been doing it for 10 years now? These 10 years that I fucking graft hard. I work really hard for this. I'm not sure how many other athletes in the field are in the same situation as me, where they're waking up at 4 a.m. to run classes, and I know someone like Travis definitely does it, but I think I got a lot of other things on my plate, not running 4 or 5 kids around the house, but there's other stuff as well. But yeah, I think I do a very good job of trying to train, trying to balance my social life, trying to balance love life, and then trying to balance everything else as well. So sometimes I forget, like I can get caught up in just going through the motions of training. And I think this year, what we spoke about in the semi-finals podcast that we did, was I didn't allow that to happen. And I wanted to make sure that every session had intent behind it. Everything had meaning behind it. And it was focused on the goal, which is getting and qualifying for the CrossFit Games. So even though I'd now got the ticket to it, that shouldn't change. Now the goal is make sure you belong there. Make sure that people know you belong there. And that's not necessarily through a social media post. It's through like my attitude, my effort, my commitment when I'm out there on the floor doing my warm up, doing my workout and doing my cool downs, all that sort of stuff, eating my food, trying to sort my sleep out, doing my recovery. It's all part of the package. Because this is a huge commitment to my life. It's definitely changed a few things in my life over the last 3 or 4 months as well, because I do this. But it's something that I love to do, and I choose to do this, and I'm incredibly grateful that I can do it. So reminding myself that I do belong every single time I go down to the gym floor at Coastal Fitness, every time I go to a local competition, every time I get the opportunity to go to semi-finals, quarterfinals of the games, like I need to remind myself of why I do it. So that's why.
I love it. Okay, we're going to move into some questions that came in from some of our audience.
Yeah.
Not sure if these are going to be quick fire questions, but we can try.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to actually finish by just talking about what you have coming up next, and reflections and learnings from the games, and how we're going to into next season. Okay, so in no particular order, first question from Cloyd Layrit, one of our process subscribers, Leanne. An obvious question, but what was your most favorite event?
I think the 2 favorite events are probably the 2 that I did best in, which would be Alpaca and Helena, or Helena, however you say it. But I think Helena was, Alpaca was cool because they didn't get to do it last year. Got to do it this year. But in terms of an actual workout, like, this is going to sound stupid because a lot of people made this workout look hard. I probably made it look hard as well, but it wasn't a hard workout. You did the kettlebell clean and jerks. You literally had to walk back to the rope or else you're going to fail a rope climb. So like your heart rate's high for a little bit and then it comes down and you literally sat on the mat like it felt like a child in a playroom, just sitting there like chalking my hands and like just looking up at a rope. Okay, 3, 2, 1, just climb the rope, come back down, stroll over to the next mat, like do a roly-poly onto the mat. Like
the sled actually looked like it crushed a lot of people.
The sled was really heavy.
And I think there was a lot of people didn't get their footwear right.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Jason Hopper. Hopper looked really bad. Yeah, and it just looked
Parker.
like, I mean, I know what it's like pushing a sled when you got the wrong shoes on and how hard that can be.
Yeah. Well, you see Alex Kazan's shoes came off.
Yeah. I
mean, luckily, shout out to Tia. They hooked all their athletes up and they had turf shoes. And I could actually feel like I was wearing like studded boots, is what it felt like. And it was actually really good. But that first and last sled was really heavy. And it did not move like it moved last year for those athletes because it was wet on the turf last year. So this year it was literally like glued to the ground. So like 3, 2, 1, everyone like charged at the sled and went and just like hit a brick wall. Like no one moved. But yeah, that workout was just slow. So it didn't feel like you really accomplished something at the end of a workout, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you like crush on the floor, like, okay, that was a hard workout. But I think my favorite one was Helena. I think for a lot of the athletes, even if they probably didn't do well in the workout, was Helena. Just the setup of it. I think that entry in and out of the Coliseum is so cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
So 3, 2, 1, like it's also the horseshoe to start to try and make
that was cool.
To try and make up for the distances moving to the bars. Good that CrossFit did that. So the run outside, that was fine. But coming back into the Coliseum every time, and there's only 8 lanes, so each lane had a long pull-up bar. So that was really cool. Like you basically go find your lane. There's no time to stop. Like I think everyone went unbroken. I don't think anyone didn't. Right? I can't remember anyone not breaking it. Yeah. So I mean, that was a really, really cool event. Like seeing the Coliseum like rise up every time you came in, like hearing the cheers when athletes came in was really cool. And I think in every single heat there was always a tight race between 2 or 3 people. In my heat, that was myself, Oldis, Upkinitz, and Henrik Happalainen.
Yep.
And we're all pretty close to each other. So it was just a really cool event. And I think the community enjoyed it as much as the athletes as well.
I mean, one thing I kept on thinking, because I watched all of your events and, you know, actually, even though I was in Europe, our time zones worked out quite nicely where it was always kind of like the end of my day. Probably easier being in Europe than it would have been had I been in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But there's a number of events where, well, I guess, okay, context is I'm so used to you starting workouts hard and then kind of falling back and like dropping off in time.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the games, number one, how fast everyone goes from the start.
Yeah, everyone's
like people,
ridiculous.
like every single event, people fly out the gates.
Yeah.
And you actually, I think, paced the vast majority of the workouts really, really well.
Yeah.
Like it was expertly done. Helena was awesome. Like seeing the pace that people went out in that first round and see you just slowly climbing back to then be in that final set of dumbbell snatches where you guys are just almost rep for rep. And you can just see whose cycle speed is going to finish them ahead.
Yeah.
Is that something that you observed and thought about as well?
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely not going to be listening to this podcast, but the Brazilian guy, Saveni, next to me.
Huge arms.
Just the biggest man in the world. He's just so jacked. That sled push, the pig flips, and there's another event as well. He was just like, he must have been like, on the sled push, he must have been like 40 meters ahead of me by the time I finished my first set of sled push. And then
he was failing rope climbs.
He failed rope climbs, yeah. But I mean, that sort of shit puts you off your game plan like pretty quick. I also think that it was to my detriment that I didn't start fast in some events, like the 5K and the bike ride. The bike ride, I was fucked. I was doomed from the start. So I was seated very, very last because I got the back feel, right? So the way that they set up the Trek bike to start was that they had 2 lines, first on the left through to 20th on the right, and then 21st through to 40th in the line behind.
So in the outside lane.
Outside, so yeah, and then the first is the left corner.
Yeah.
So I basically got the longest route to the left corner out of every single athlete. Also, the handlebars are touching everyone. Like there's no space. I had Cole Grayshaber in front of me because he was 20th ranked. And I tapped him on the shoulder just before we went. I said, hey, like, I need you to get out hard so that we can both get out of here. Otherwise, we're fucked. And he's like, I'm not very good on the bike. And I was like, oh, sick.
You asked me if you could swap.
Well, you're not allowed. Yeah. So that was a rolling start.
Yeah.
So in the rolling start, 3, 2, 1, go. I was already like, I may as well had like a 10-meter like candy cap on me. I should have started. It's ridiculous. So I had to work so hard to get back up. And the 5K was the same because there was 80 athletes. 60.
It would have been cool if they did a time trial when you guys did your bike fittings.
Yeah.
To set the seed.
Yeah. That's what everyone thought they were going to do, but they didn't do it. Yeah, so the 5K was the same because like the women were there as well. It was a clusterfuck. I remember watching Velna. Velna was on the left slightly in front of me, and like someone just shoved him, and it was quite funny. He actually just put a post of it last night, but he like stumbled and almost ate shit and got like literally stampeded by people. He managed to stay up, but it was just so packed. Like even just standing there, like people's feet were coming in between your feet, and like on that you needed to get out in front. You just had to. So on that, I didn't do that.
So there's in basically the mass start events, a slow start really crippled you.
Yeah. So I remember myself and Yonakoski were running. I looked at Yona. I said, "Yona, what pace are we holding?" He's like 3:40. I was like, "Holy shit, that's fast pace." But then Velna was holding a 3:30 pace. Didn't hold that for the whole race, of course. But like that's just what you need to do. You just have to be okay at setting yourself on fire and then calming down and going because you just get caught up. So I think that was to my detriment in some events, but some things like
good learning as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Helena is my answer.
Helena's favorite event. Okay. Well, what was your worst event?
I didn't really enjoy the sandbag squatting workout, but I'm happy that I got through that one. I didn't finish it, but it was just a hard workout.
I think that workout, people don't appreciate how hard it is to squat with a 200-pound sandbag in that position.
Well, the thing is that we're all backstage warming up underneath the Coliseum, and everyone's kind of like walking around. Like you can see people like doing like 10 reps, dropping it, and then cleaning it up, doing 5 more reps, and running to the ski erg. And then Sam Quant goes in heat 1 and fucking annihilates that workout. Holy shit, that was so impressive.
He basically just set the standard to speed.
And then everyone basically turned around like, okay, we're going unbroken then. Yeah. And like no one really like questioned it. Unfortunately, like I got so many no reps in that, which I'm still pretty bummed about. I don't think there are no reps, but whatever. And that definitely killed me. And I got like 3 in a row in one of the 5 sections. And then I got another 2 in the next part. And that doing 5 no reps.
5 extra reps.
That's
10% of the workout.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And I was like, had to drop it. I would have otherwise tried to hold on. I remember Max being like, what do you reckon? I'm like, I reckon I'm going to try go like 20 and 10 or unbroken. And then he watched me do a rep and just started laughing at me. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to go unbroken. But then when you get out on the floor, it's very different.
Yeah, of course.
But that was a cool workout. I still liked that workout, even though I didn't do very well in it. I didn't enjoy the sprint interval workout, the burpee box jump one. Again, I got fucking nailed by 2 no reps, which I saw videos of me afterwards, and I can swear to God, they're not no reps, but like hugely costly on the burpee box jump over. It's literally like anywhere between 3 to 4 seconds per rep, and you get 2 no reps, you're out. Yeah, you're done. So that stitched me up, and that kind of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. So I'd say that one was probably my least favorite event.
I know you said you felt disappointed about the skill medley as well.
Yeah.
Although you did some really good stuff in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just a bit sloppy, to be honest. That's all. The freestyle handstand push-ups went better than I thought, and then my stairs, which are normally I think I'm pretty good at stairs. I just butchered that like 3 times in a row. It's just frustrating, and that just puts so much fatigue through your arms as well. That was just me being sloppy and just trying to move too fast when I could have just taken another half second and then just executed first time. So that's a little bit frustrating, but it was still a fun workout though, I guess.
Nice. Okay, next question. This one from Danny Voronov, our boy from Israel. His question is thoughts on the cuts. So I listened to Dave Castro's episode that he put out talking about why he had the cuts.
You can't just say it's because golf does it and because every other sport does it, because every other sport does, like for example golf. Yeah, you play the same course.
No, I think he had some good points around like spectators, sponsors, judges, testing options. So basically, what he had said, I don't know if anyone else has seen. Have you seen that video?
I've seen it,
Yeah, on his own YouTube. He basically said that by having cuts, what the days were getting really, really long, and so what that meant for a spectator who wants to consume good CrossFit, it meant that like they would have to take breaks, and you couldn't maintain that intensity of watching when there's just 15 hours nonstop. Yeah. So the whole idea of the cuts was to create more deliberate pauses and breaks within the day to allow spectators to like actually, watch more high quality CrossFit. Another one was judges on the limited numbers they had was to give judges breaks because they were noticing attrition in judging quality as the days went on because judges were doing so much back to back. So by giving them breaks, for the vendors and the sponsors, they wanted to basically have the ability for like mass groups of like the audience and spectators to leave and actually like spend time within the village, but when they didn't have the cuts, everyone was just there all the time. Testing options, so when you got a smaller pool of athletes, you can do more tests, like for example the max lift as an example. He used the example of the clean 1RM when there was a really small, I think it was like the final day when they had the cuts last time. And he basically, the final thing in terms of the athletes was that there is still a gulf within the athletes. Even though this is the top 40 in the world, like there is definitely a difference between the top 20 and probably the bottom 10. Yeah. With that said, you look at the bottom 10 and people got cut this year, like you've got some perennial CrossFit Games athletes who didn't make that cut. And you made that cut, which I think we should just note and say that was an amazing achievement. Which I think those are all valid points. But what do you think as an athlete taking part?
I think if you are trying to test overall and like encompassing fitness, you can't cut. I get the idea of it, but if you're like, for example, like if someone like a Jason Hopper gets cut and let's say he would have been the strongest person to lift in the max lift event,
he could have clawed back points and finished higher.
Exactly. And it changes the podium as well. And I think because every event is different, it's very hard to do cuts. And I totally understand like his reference to other sports, like every sport does it.
So what you're saying, because golfers, you always hit the same thing. So
for example,
you would get cut just because you're having an off day, not because the test didn't favor you.
Correct, exactly. Gotcha. And same for like any other teams in a season, right? You get cut because you go to the playoffs and all that sort of stuff. So I totally understand that side of it. But I think unless the tests are the same every single year, then it doesn't really make sense. I don't say like I'm not for the argument of like, oh, athletes travel so far and they only get 2 days. Like that's just the sport, whatever, get on with it.
But it's still a consideration.
Still a consideration.
I do think that with 150, however many athletes it was in 2019, totally understand the reason for cuts. Like you can't run 150 person workouts for the whole CrossFit Games. But when there's only 40, I would say that the need for cuts is a lot less.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think like to your point saying that spectators can't watch that amount of whatever it is, let's be honest, spectators at the CrossFit Games, the tickets are so few and far between. For the Coliseum, for example, people only go to watch the person they know, really, and probably the last heat. So it doesn't matter if they're in heat 1 or heat 4 or heat 5. They're probably going to watch the heat 1 where their boy or girl is competing from their gym. They're going to go to Vendor Village for heat 2, 3, and 4, and they'll come back for the final heat 5. Because that's just how CrossFit is, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very different. Whereas, like, for example, go back to golf, for example, like you're watching people take points away from you, whatever, but you're just supporting your one athlete. So it's very, very different, I think, with CrossFit. I think I'm against cuts. Yeah. But I can see both sides of the argument, but I'm against it.
Same question. Same guy, Danny Voronov. He asked, what did you think of the programming?
I think the program was good. I enjoyed the programming, but again, it's not an overall test if you're cutting people. So for example, if they're using that diagram they had at the beginning of weightlifting, monostructural, gymnastics, and CrossFit in the middle.
You didn't get the weightlifting if you got cut.
Well, you didn't get the monostructural either because you didn't get the 5K.
5K run, yeah.
So how can that be a test? You're not even testing the 20 people, the 10 people who got cut off at the beginning. So I understand it again, and I think the programming was good, but if you're cutting people, then the programming is very subjective to whatever the individual got tested on. Because again, people would be like, oh, well, all the big guys got through or all the small guys got through because of X workout,
So your answer is that you like the tests that were programmed at the games, but the cuts,
overall test for 12
cuts meant
tests
that not everyone was able
Correct.
to actually have a taste. So it ended up not being a balanced set of fitness.
Yeah.
So I guess the way that you therefore would have to look at whether or not it's a balanced set of tests, which I think is the criteria that most people would use to judge whether the programming was good, was then really you have to look at day 1 and 2, was that a balanced set of tests? And then day 1, 2, and 3, was that a balanced set of tests? Because then you're testing the next 30. And then all 5 days, was that 4 days, was that a balanced set of tests? Yeah, so they would have to have micro balances. So then I'm just thinking, critiquing that now, in day 1, you've got the endurance test on the bike. You got the next one, which is remind me, was it pig flip?
Yeah, pig flip.
Pig flip next. Okay, so that's a pretty long one again.
Yeah.
And then what was your third event on day 1?
Can't remember.
Sandbag?
Colosseum.
No, sandbag was day 2.
Sandbag, yeah.
What was it? Sandbag was day 3 actually.
No, sandbag was day 2.
Oh yeah, after the gymnastics medley.
Gymnastics medley was day 1.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then day 2 was alpaca.
Okay, so then you
sand. What do they call it? Ski bag.
Ski bag.
Ski bag, and then the last one was Helena.
Okay, so then you look at those tests then, and then you didn't have any strength tests in the first 2 days. So then that alone, you can say that, well, then that's not a fair set of tests for the bottom 10 that get cut. Okay, cool.
I think one thing to note as well, and I was so amazed walking to the warm-up area every time and just being in the warm-up area, is that the set of tests in the quarters and semi-finals allowed these massive athletes to get through. I was like apart from Colton Mertens, I was like the smallest guy there.
Yeah.
It was nuts. Everyone in the heat 1 and 2 were like 6'2", 6'3", and like 220 plus. They were massive human beings, and I've never seen that at the CrossFit Games or any CrossFit competition, to be honest. So it's just like it's changing for sure, but again, maybe it's just the tests that were tested in semi-finals, right?
You bring out the gymnastics dumbbell
regionals
that Castro bring that year, then you could see, a bunch of Chris Spielers competing at the games again.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty. It was cool to see, but also thought provoking as well at the same time.
Yeah. What was going through? This one is from Riccieri Riri. Which is Rich and Constantine, trains here at Coastal. What was going through your head when doing the pig flips? So, I think his next piece, which I didn't write, he said that looked brutal or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I've never really been exposed to a pig or like flipping, so I'd done that the day before, basically. Felt pretty confident with it, but it's very different when you have to do it after a 40-minute bike ride. So I think the 40-minute bike ride, which was actually like a 45-minute bike ride for everyone, whether you're first or last, everyone was fucked after it. Like, everyone's legs were just destroyed. My arms are like cramping up as well, just from holding the handlebars, because there's not many points during that bike ride where you can switch off.
Does that make you want to get a mountain bike like mine now in Hong Kong?
Your bike is so shit. It's literally putting you on a forward tilt. But that trek bike was really nice. I thought about buying it, but it cost $7,000 in Hong Kong.
It looked like the handlebars are really wide.
Yeah, they're wide.
Yeah,
it was a proper mountain bike.
Yeah.
So I thought about buying it, but it's too expensive, so I didn't get it. So that first event had huge carryover to event 2 because it was only a 30-minute turnaround. So like you finished it, you had to then get back to the athlete area, which is like a long walk from Quinn Park. And don't forget, I also then went and coached Leigh Coates before then running back to then try to do my ice bath and then go and get ready for event 2, which is a pig chipper. The pig chipper was 10 pig flips, which wasn't terrible. But then in the middle of that, you had 50 chest to bars, you had 100 toes to bar, you had 100 wall balls, and then you got to do the pig flips again. Like, I think everyone's quads were cramping on the wall balls.
Did you cramp?
Yeah, bad.
Well, I mean, you're notorious for cramping.
Yeah, I was cramping bad. But I feel like I have a decent way to deal with it. Some people have to get carried off the field. Like Nick Matthews got carried off the field. Jake Douglas got carried off the field. So like in between the second set of 10 pig flips, I was sitting in a squat, and I never sit in a squat between exercises because I don't enjoy sitting in a squat like that. And I had to sit in a squat because my quads were seizing up. So just like stretching my quads, put my elbows on my knees, and suddenly my tricep would cramp up. It's like my arms going straight out here, like trying to pull it back. So the deadlift off the floor, totally fine. Sit it on my knee, fine. As soon as I cleaned it and then had to press it, my quads would start to cramp, and then my tricep would start to cramp. And it was just like, that was at rep 2. And I had 8 more to go, and I finished 1 rep short. So yeah, it was heavy. But I think we need to invest in one that goes to fitness.
2 flips and you have to spin around.
Just take it outside.
Okay, next question. This one is again from Cloyd Leyrit. I always thought it was Cloyd Fit. Who's your favorite athlete to hang out with?
That was competing.
Yeah.
I think the pair of them, I think 3 of them, Chandler, Smith, Will Murad, and Noah Olsen, all 3 really good guys. We've actually spent time with those 3 guys at the Training Think Tank camp in 2019. So they were always really supportive, always down for a chat, and I've hung out with those 3 guys in other competitions as well. I saw them all during the Open at Gov Games as well in Dubai. So they're always good to hang out with. David Sharonke was a really nice guy. We got on really well. We were in the same heat a lot of the time. He was a good lad, and I know we've got like mutual connections here in Hong Kong.
Also a podcast guest.
Also a podcast, one of your originals, wasn't he?
He was.
Who else? Andre Houdet, who wasn't in the individual side of things, but he was with his No Shortcuts team, who I think they took 5th, which is pretty cool. And Nyenka, who's on his team as well, who we have a connection with. Julian. Yella Hosto. But he was individual.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to him too much, but Andre was always nice, always a nice person to be around, just wishing good luck and fist bumps and all that sort of stuff. But I think in the individual field, probably Dave and then Will, Chandler, and Noah, all good guys.
Are you missing your roommate from Physical Leigh? Next question. Spare you the embarrassment. What was the anti-doping / testing protocol like?
Top 5 got tested, had to stick around and get tested. I believe because Leigh Coates got tested as well in the age group, and she said that 5th and 4th.
I didn't even know that. Sorry to cut you up. I didn't even know that age groups got tested.
Yeah, they get tested as well.
That's good.
She said that. This is from her, not from me. Well, it's now from me.
I swear all the 4-year-olds are juiced up to the max.
I mean, they're all way more jacked than I am.
Yeah.
But she said that 5th and 4th did a urine test, and 3rd, 2nd, and 1st did a blood test. Is what she said.
Interesting.
Which I was amazed that they would not just do a blood for everyone or a urine for everyone. I know at semi-finals I did urine, but I also know people at other semi-finals across the world did blood tests. So I don't know. But yeah, that's the protocol. Basically, as soon as the last event is done, the top 5 escorted to a room and they do their drug test. Very similar to what we would do when we played rugby.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for writing in for the great questions. I want to finish up by asking you about how you're now feeling now that the games is done. Technically, that is a very, very long 2023 season wrapped up for you. And I feel like, we were just mapping out our next training cycle for the process programming and basically what it's going to look like for the rest of the year. And we're not that far away from starting to think about the 2023, 2024 CrossFit Open. Sorry, 24, 25. So how are you feeling? Where's your head at?
I have a lot. I think because COVID is now not a thing anymore, travel's opened up a little bit. So I actually spent last weekend in Shanghai helping to promote the Asia Fitness Championships with someone who we know called Max, who runs Project One over there. So basically what I'm saying is that there's quite a few competitions around the region, which I would like to compete in. And they're actually quite big events, which is cool. Guys come in from around Asia generally to compete. And that's something that I haven't done in 3 years. I've done semifinals and online semifinals, and last chance qualified, did semifinals again this year in the games, but I haven't been able to represent around Asia, which is something I enjoy doing as well. And I feel like it's a nice way to kick off the season and, get you used to competing again, because the last 3 years it's like, oh shit, I got to go compete in quarterfinals, I got to compete in semifinals. I kind of forgot how to do that a little bit. So I want to compete around the area. But that kind of means that I've not really taken a deload. Apart from the last week, I guess it was a bit of a deload, but I was traveling a lot as well. So yeah, I guess I want to do a few competitions around, and I give another crack at individual is the goal. I think this might be my last year doing individual, and then I might think about going team the year after.
Not masters?
Nah. I mean, no offense to those guys, but
no offense to me.
No offense to you, but those tests were just shit tests. They were just pretty uneventful, pretty boring tests to watch. You know, they're not taking anything away from the athletes who are a part of it, but like just seeing that and like seeing how the masters and age group and the teenagers were kind of treated, it doesn't fill me with any excitement to try to do that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that from a distance, the coverage wasn't the best this year.
Yeah,
I think it actually was a step backwards from last year, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
So has it fired you up more?
Yeah, I think so.
You know, do you think that next year you can take one of those top 2 spaces?
Let's hope so. That's what I'm here for. So I'll try.
So.
Yeah.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank
you
you for your time. And again, just amazing job this
Thank
season. You know, you've had a lot of people behind you. We're all super proud of you here at the Process and Coastal. And I mean, you got many, many new fans lining up to step inside Coastal Fitness right now to take a photo with you. So I know
they all feel sorry for me because they CrossFit posted the thing saying feeling sadness. That's why people thought I'm going to top myself in my room.
But yeah, amazing job.
Thank you.